Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to bring you guys my end of January wrap up. So I'm going to be discussing the 15 books that I read in the second half of January. If you want to see my mid-month wrap up where I discussed all the books that I read in the first half of the month, I will of course link that video up in the cards above. And this time around I did something really smart and I actually took notes for myself so that the filming process would go much smoother. I just feel so scattered and all over the place today, but without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump into this wrap up. The first book that I want to talk about is Girls Before Earls by Anna Bennett. I was turned on to this author because one of her novellas was featured in the Kissing Under the Mistletoe bind-up. This was a bind-up of 3 Christmas-themed historical romance novellas, and Anna Bennett's in particular was my favorite of that bind-up. I think I almost gave it 5 stars. It was like fake dating goodness. We love to see it. And so I saw that this book came out very recently, I think on December 28th, and it's the first in a new series. It's the Rogues to Lovers series. The cover and the title is also adorable, and this book centers around this little town called Belhaven, which is a coastal town in England. We have Hazel, who is the headmistress of this pretty new school for girls called Belhaven Academy. We have our hero, Gabriel. He's kind of a rake, and now he is tasked with being the guardian to his niece Kitty after her parents pass away from a tragic accident. He has no idea how to raise a teenage girl, so he just puts her in these different girls' academies. She keeps getting expelled because she's a troublemaker. Obviously, she's lashing out because of her grief and things like that. Plus, her and Gabriel just don't get along. So Belhaven Academy is kind of Gabriel's last hope. And at first, Hazel doesn't want to admit Kitty because she's a known troublemaker, and Hazel's trying to build up Belhaven Academy as a very reputable school for girls. So Gabriel and Hazel end up striking this deal, and basically Gabriel has to come visit Kitty every other week, even though he's based in London, to see her progress and to bond with her. And Hazel ends up getting roped into Gabriel's visits with Kitty, and this was just adorable. It's like the perfect balance of sweet, angsty, and sexy. There's other things going on in this story. Gabriel is already engaged to somebody else, plus Hazel is not a woman of nobility, so it's not really proper for Gabriel to want to be with somebody like Hazel. And yeah, it's so good. I couldn't help but give it 5 stars. It was just an utter delight, and I need to read more from Anna Bennett. Next up, we have a novella by Cassie Mint. I think you guys know that I have been binging a bunch of her novellas lately. This one is called Room 10, Lights, Camera, Action. It's technically a part of this series that centers around a sex club, basically, and Room 10 in this club is where there are cameras, so people could film themselves doing whatever they want, basically. So this is a reverse harem. We have our heroine. I cannot remember names. It is what it is. But her uncle is absolutely terrible, and he decides to auction off her virginity. And meanwhile, she has these 3 bodyguards that they have all been attracted to her, and she's been attracted to them for years, but they've never done anything about it because they're her bodyguards. But she eventually decides to take matters into her own hands, and she films a sex tape with her 3 bodyguards so that this auction doesn't happen. And it was a good time. I gave it 4 stars. I think I would have liked it more if it was maybe just a little bit longer. And there was only 1 steamy scene with her and the bodyguards, and I would have liked to there have been maybe 1 more scene to kind of round out the story as a whole, but it was solid, like I said, just a really fun time. Then we have Only for You by Naima Simone. This is book 3 in a series of novellas. Basically, each novella centers around one of these 3 best friends. They own a sex club together, and I really enjoyed the first 2 novellas of this little series, but I read them like a couple of years ago at this point, so it was well past time that I finally read this final novella, and unfortunately it was my least favorite. I gave it 3 stars. I think I just wasn't really engaged in the story or with the characters. I mean, it's very steamy, but yeah, I don't know. I wasn't feeling it, so I gave it 3 stars. It's fine. It is what it is. Next up, we have Barbarian's Taming by Ruby Dixon. This is book 9, I believe, in her Ice Planet Barbarian series. And the specific reason why I decided to read this book was because around this time of the month, I was feeling very slumpy. I had read those 2 novellas that I had just talked about and they were like fine, nothing amazing. And also a few days before, I had just finished Manacled by Senlin Yu, and I still can't stop thinking about that book. And yeah, I wasn't finding anything amazing. And so I turned to Ice Planet Barbarians because these books are like candy to me. I know what I'm getting when I go into them. I know I'm gonna have a good time. I know the pacing is gonna be really great. It's going to keep me engaged, all of those things. And so I decided to just continue on with the series. And this one specifically is about Maddie and Hassen, I believe, or Hassen is his name. And this one's just fun because it's kind of a friends with benefits situation. It's also interesting because both of these characters kind of feel out of place in their tribe. If you don't know anything about this series, this takes place on an ice planet where a bunch of human women crash landed. And so then we have this tribe of aliens that have welcomed them with open arms. And so each of these books has been a romance between a human woman and an alien man. And so, yeah, both of these characters just don't feel like they really belong in the tribe. And so they find comfort in each other. And it's just, yeah, it was a good time. Gave it 4 stars. I did also read Barbarian's Heart, which is book 10 in the series, a few days later. And this one is about Pashov and Stacy. This one is an amnesia / second chance romance. Basically something very traumatic happens at the end of Barbarian's taming to the whole tribe. Pashov gets severely injured. He forgets all about Stacy and their child. And so this is their second chance romance. It was like the perfect balance of heart-wrenching and sweet and just, yeah, really, really great as well. Gave this one 4 stars, just like with Barbarian's Taming. Next book we have to talk about is Lady Isabella's Scandalous Marriage by Jennifer Ashley. I finally read this book. This is book 2 in her, what is it, the Mackenzie and McBride's series, which is a historical romance series. I read book 1 like back in 2020. It had been a long time, and I had heard so many amazing things about this because it's a marriage in trouble story, which is one of my absolute favorite tropes. And first things first that I had to say about this book is that it is easily one of the sexiest books that I've read in a while. And that's not necessarily because of like the number of steamy scenes or anything like that. It's just like the chemistry and the sexual tension between Mac, our hero, and Isabella, our heroine. It's just sizzling the entire time. And the steamy scenes, like some of them live in my head rent free at this point. Like, this book was hot. It was so good. But yeah, this is a marriage in trouble story. We have Mac, who is this Scottish artist, and then we have Isabella, who, when she debuted into society at the age of 18, she literally went to her first ball. She met Mac. They immediately kind of fell for each other, and they ran away together and got married. And so now it's a few years later down the road. They have been separated for a long time. There was just a lot of pain in their marriage. Content warning for miscarriage. That's a pretty common content warning with marriage in trouble stories, and it really makes sense. And so yeah, the way that they find their way back to each other was just amazing. The pacing was perfect. Like I said, one of the hottest and like most intense romances that I've read in a while. So highly recommend it. I need to read more of the books in this series. For some reason, this series always gets put on the back burner of my historical romance TBR, but I just like need to make myself read more of these books because I've given both books that I've read so far 5 stars. Next up, we have a book that I DNF'd. This is The Red by Tiffany Rice. What is so weird is that I have read quite a few books from Tiffany Rice in the past, and I've enjoyed them all. I was so shocked that I did not like this book. I didn't vibe with this book. I DNF'd it at about the 32% mark. This is an erotic fantasy story, I would say. And I actually have read book 2 in this little series, and I gave that one 4 stars. I did enjoy it. This one's about our heroine. I don't remember names once again, but she owns this art gallery. Things are not going well. She thinks she's gonna have to sell it pretty soon. This guy, our hero, just shows up and tells her that he can help her out with keeping her gallery open, but all she needs to do is make this deal with him that she will make herself available to him, for lack of a better word. And here's the thing that kind of, rubbed me the wrong way is that while the heroine definitely gave full consent to the hero to do whatever he wanted to her and with her, what I didn't like is that he still didn't like run things by her. He would just put her into these situations, and luckily she enjoyed them, but that just rubbed me the wrong way, is that like in a way she really didn't give her full consent, because he would just like do things with her and she had no idea what was going to happen. And I found that kind of weird, and I just wasn't into it. So I DNF'd it. It is what it is. Then let's see. Ooh, next up we have one of my favorite books that I read this month. This is Witches Get Stitches by Juliet Cross. This series has my heart. What can I say? My heart and my soul. I love this series so much. This is book 3 in the Stay a Spell series. This is a paranormal romance series that takes place in New Orleans, which is the area in which I live, and I'm from here. And so this story is about Nico, who is the cousin of Mateo, who was the hero in book 1 of the series, just to give you a little bit of context. He is a werewolf, just like Mateo is. And then we have Violet, who is one of the Savoy sisters that this series centers around. So she is a witch. And I was looking forward to their romance so much, because we were introduced to these two characters having a romance all the way back in book 1. So I have been so excited to read their story for that long. And the audiobook for this one finally came out a couple of weeks ago. So I knew that I just needed to read it right away as soon as it dropped onto my Audible account. And this just delivered everything that I wanted from it. I think that this might be the best book in this series yet, which is really saying something, because I truly adored books 1 and 2. This romance between Nico and Violet is just, it's perfection. What can I say? We have the perfect balance of like all the fire emojis, just very sexy for sure. But we've also got the perfect amount of angst. And what I actually really liked about the angst is that once Violet and Nico got together, it was a very low angst romance, but everything leading up to them getting together was where the angst was. And I personally really enjoy those kinds of romances where once they're together, there's not too much angst going on. The drama kind of comes from a B plot. But yeah, this was fantastic. I cannot recommend the audiobooks for this series highly enough, by the way. Aiden Snow voices the heroes in this series, and his voice is just literal perfection for these characters, and like his voice just makes me melt. Like, I just love him. I love his narration so much. Next up we have Temp by Jessica Cain. This is her newest release. Basically anytime she drops a new novella, I have to read it almost right away, and I'm so happy because I gave this one 5 stars. It's actually been a little while since I've given a Jessica Cain novella 5 stars, and actually a few days before this I had tried reading one of her backlist titles and I actually DNF'd it, but I DNF'd it so early on in the book that I didn't notate it on my Goodreads or anything. But I have never DNF'd a Jessica Cain novella before. So I was like, uh-oh, do I not like her novellas anymore? So when this one dropped maybe a week or so ago, I had to read it to see if my love for Jessica Cain had gone away or something like that. And I'm just happy to say that this one delivered for me. This one is about Matthew. He's a cold-hearted billionaire. I think that Jessica Cain writes those kinds of characters really well. We have Kaylee, who is sent in to spy on Matthew and his business. I believe he works in real estate. But things backfire because Matthew knows right away who she is. And the second that she shows up for her interview, he's just insanely attracted to her, and vice versa. We know that Jessica Cain loves insta-lust, insta-love, all of those things. And this just gave me everything that I wanted. We love a hero who like literally loses his mind over the heroine. I feel like lately, Jessica Cain has really been pushing it with how insane her heroes are, because the hero in Tutoring the Delinquent, which was her release before this one, he's quite literally insane as well. And I do want to say that there is a suicide attempt in this. Definite content warning for that. So yeah, there's a lot going on in this novella, but it did really work for me and I gave it 5 stars. Next up, we have The Perks of Loving a Wallflower by Erica Ridley. Let me just get this out of the way. This book is truly as amazing as everybody says it is. I was influenced to read this specifically by Jess from Peace Love Books and Tori from Novel Life and Crystal from Crystal's Bookish Life. I know that the 3 of them in particular absolutely loved this book. And I was also intrigued because I've heard a lot of mixed reviews about the first book in this series, which is called The Duke Heist. But like I said, so many people have been raving about this one. So yeah, I thought that I would just jump into this, even though it is technically book 2 in a series. But this is a series that centers around the Wild Winchesters. This is a really fun found family story. We essentially have, I want to say there were 6 orphans that this Baron Vanderbean, took in when they were children, and he raised them as his own. And they are such a fun family because each of these siblings have a different unique skill. So the Winchester that we're centering around in this story is Tommy. Tommy has this insane talent for dressing up and being all these different kinds of characters depending on what needs to be done, because this family, they love to like perform heists and things like that. They basically just want to take down the patriarchy, right? And so yeah, like Tommy is just a master of becoming all of these different kinds of characters, regardless of them being men or women or what have you. And so Tommy has been crushing on Philippa for years, but obviously, you know, this takes place in like Regency era London. Of course, it wouldn't be anything close to proper for Tommy to pursue Philippa as she is. So what's really fun about this is that it has a fake dating aspect, because Tommy decides to become the new Baron Vanderbean. And so she dresses as a man, and she goes to, I believe it's Hyde Park, where Philippa and her mother are, and he starts flirting with her. And so Tommy and Philippa end up striking up this deal that they will have this fake courtship. And what I really appreciated is that pretty early on in the book, Tommy reveals to Philippa who she really is, but Philippa just has this attraction to Tommy and vice versa. And so yeah, it's just, it has the perfect balance of like this tender and beautiful romance, but there's also a lot of angst, obviously, because how could these 2 people be together in real life with Tommy not being a character, you know, with Tommy being herself. And I just adore the Winchesters. Like, I am just obsessed with all of them as individuals and all of them as a family. And this was just a beautiful story, but also had some amazing laugh out loud moments. I cannot recommend this book highly enough. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Next up, we have Duke Gone Rogue. This is by Christy Carlisle. This is the first book that I have read by this author, and I'm not sure that this is the historical romance author for me. I gave this 3 stars. I got this as an e-arc off of NetGalley. A few of the books that I've talked about I got as e-arcs off of NetGalley. I was originally kind of excited about this book because I saw someone that I follow on Twitter rave about it, and I knew that it featured a grumpy Duke as our hero, and like, I'm a sucker for grumpy Dukes, right? And so yeah, this centers around Will and Maddie. I also really enjoyed Maddie as a character because she's really into botany. She specifically experiments with making hybrids of different roses and things like that. But yeah, this, I really enjoyed like the first like 40% or so of this. I'm not even gonna go into the plot because I didn't love the book, right? I gave it 3 stars. But yeah, I feel like this author could have done so much more with the tension and the chemistry that she had built up between Will and Maddie in the first half. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the second half kind of lost steam in that way. That like, I feel like maybe the pacing was slower. I just wasn't as engaged in the romance. I wasn't as invested in the characters. Like, yeah. so it unfortunately just ended up being okay. Next up, we have Crier's War by Nina Varela. This is book 1 in a YA science fiction / fantasy duology. I'd heard pretty good things about this one. This also features a sapphic romance. I was very excited about that. The main premise centers around this planet. I believe it's Rabu. No, it's the kingdom of Rabu, and I can't remember what the planet is called. But this is a kingdom where we have humans and we have they're robots. They're called the Autome, and they were designed to look and act a lot like humans. But there was this big war. Basically, the Autome, these robots, took over, and now the humans are second-class citizens. We have Crier, who is the princess of this kingdom, essentially. She is an Autome because, like I said, they are now the ruling class. We have Ayla, who is a human. She works as a servant for the palace, and so it's a romance between the two of them. I think my main issue with this book is that I personally felt zero chemistry between Crier and Ayla. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I did, however, really enjoy definitely like the first like 60 to 70% of this book because I thought the pacing was really well done. I thought the world was very interesting and I liked the characters, but by the last 30% or so, I just was not invested in the characters anymore. Like I said, I wasn't feeling any chemistry between Ayla and Crier, so I wasn't rooting for them to be together. Like, this was just kind of fine by the end. So I gave it 3.5 stars, and I do not feel the need to read the second and final book in this duology. Next up, we have a chunky book. This is Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo. This is book 2 in the King of Scars duology. I ended up giving this 4 stars, and a lot of that is spoilery, so I'm not going to say anything spoilery in this video, but if you have read this book and you want to know my in-depth thoughts, definitely go check out my Goodreads review. It is marked as having spoilers. I go into everything in that review, but what I will say is that my main reason for giving this 4 stars is that I feel like Leigh Bardugo had so many amazing ingredients going into this second and final book of the duology. And in my personal opinion, I don't think she quite knew what to do with those amazing ingredients. So for the first like 60% or so of this book, I feel like the pacing was just off and I wasn't a fan of where the plot was going. However, the last part of this book, like I would say the last 25% or so, was pretty amazing in my opinion. So yeah, I feel kind of conflicted about this book, but at the end of the day, I did enjoy it, and I'm so glad that we do end up getting the Zoya Nikolai romance that we all deserved. I think that could have been a bigger part of the book, but we do finally get that romance. Thank the Lord. And also, I will say, I really liked the setup that this book has for a third Six of Crows book. I think that that's going to be a really interesting story. I'm really interested to see when that book is going to come out. But yeah, it was just cool to see some of the Six of Crows characters cross over with these characters. So overall, I did really enjoy it, but I also had some issues with it. Next up, we have Like No Other Lover by Julianne Long. You guys might know that I have become kind of obsessed with Julianne Long, and I've read all 4 books that are out in her Palace of Rogues series. So I wanted to read her Pennyroyal Green series because that is the series that she published before the Palace of Rogues series. This is book 2. I didn't want to read book 1 because I had heard pretty mixed reviews about it. So I thought that jumping into book 2 would be fine, and it totally is. I think it sets up the series really well. It's basically a series that centers around this small town in Sussex. But yeah, this one is about Miles and Cynthia. This is a really fun plot because it's one of those books that centers around a house party where we have our 2 main characters that are trying to court other people that are at this house party. Meanwhile, they're falling for each other and they really are meant to be with each other. So yeah, this has like the perfect amount of angst for that plot. And I just thought it was solid. I gave it 4 stars. I liked the 2 main characters a lot. I thought that they both kind of brought something a little bit different to the story and to the genre, because Miles is a scientist. He's kind of nerdy, but he's also kind of a rake. And then we have Cynthia, who has a very interesting and scandalous past involving a duel that was fought over her. So yeah, like I said, just very solid. I gave it 4 stars. I'm definitely going to continue on with the series. I'll probably read like random books. I don't think that I'll read the whole series in order necessarily, because you don't need to, but yeah, I'm definitely interested in continuing on with the series. So then last but certainly not least, we have Big Bet by Cassie Mint. This is one of her big boy romances. She has a series that centers around big boys as our heroes. And so this one is about Will and Aubrey. I adore this premise so much. We have Aubrey, who is a burlesque dancer. This takes place in Las Vegas. And then we have Will, who works as a blackjack dealer at the same casino that Aubrey works at. And so they've been friends for years. This is like the sweetest friends to lovers romance ever. And it is a novella, so it's just about like 50 to 60 pages. And oh my goodness, the pining and the longing that Cassie Mint wrote between Aubrey and Will, it was everything. Oh my goodness, like I had constant butterflies in my stomach while reading this novella. I was just so mesmerized by the writing and by the love that these two characters have for each other, and the devotion and the pining. Like I said, all of these amazing ingredients just came together so perfectly in this romance. I cannot recommend it highly enough. I think that this might be my favorite Cassie Mint novella that I've ever read, which is really saying something, because I've read some truly amazing novellas by this author. But now this makes me so excited to read the other books in this big boy series. Like, oh my god, this was just, it was novella perfection. So amazing. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this end of January wrap up. I did end up reading 32 books total, which is a very solid reading month, given that I read Rule of Wolves, which is like a 600-page book, and I read Manacled, which is like 1,600 pages. So yeah, I had a really great reading month. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I would love it if you would leave a comment down below if you want to tell me about some of your favorite books that you read in January. And I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!